Afternoon and welcome to today's RTC session on innovation with iPads. This webinar is provided by the West Midlands Apple Regional Training Centre located at Mere Green Primary School. I know we have a large number of Mere Green Primary School staff online today, but we have got staff from other schools as well, which is fantastic. We deliver courses to build the skills and confidence of educators to use Apple technology inside and outside the classroom. So my name is Terri Coombs. I'm an Apple Distinguished Educator and the Regional Training Centre Manager. I'm also a primary teacher with 20 years of experience and an IT and computing lead. Should you have any questions during this webinar, Sean O'Connor from KRCS will be monitoring the chat on my behalf and can answer any queries directly or will communicate any common questions to me at the end. He'll also be dropping in any links throughout the webinar that I might mention. So thank you for your support once again, Sean. Okay, so this is the structure of our webinar. A large proportion of the webinar focuses on hands-on exploration. So if you've got a second device available, please feel free to work in real time during the webinar, taking the opportunity to rehearse any tools and techniques modelled in the hands-on sections. Throughout the session, we're going to make use of Pages, Numbers and Keynote. And these are the intended learning outcomes for our session. So as teachers, we are professionals at providing great learning experiences for our students. So let's take a minute to think about this question first. What makes a task innovative? What are those key elements of a task that's going to make it innovative? When it comes to education, we found that the most innovative schools in the world, they evaluate and improve their practices while paying close attention to the world their students will graduate into. And they innovate, not for the sake of innovation, but with a vision of building relevant and inspiring teaching and learning communities. So your tasks, if they are innovative, will be engaging, they will be empowering, they will be active, personal, collaborative, relevant, creative, fun, unique. All of those characteristics are what we're looking for these innovative lessons. So we're not going to put this one into the chat, but reflect for a moment on your own practice and just with yourself, have that mini conversation. How many different ways, how do you currently use technology to encourage your students to innovate? And we're going to come back to this question at the end of the webinar. And hopefully throughout the webinar, we've been able to add a few more tools to your toolkit so that you can begin engaging children in innovative activities using technology. So I want you to consider this list. Each one that pops up, I want you to consider whether you use this tool as a way to encourage your students to show their learning outcomes. Which one of these do you avoid because they are difficult, time-consuming, or need you to acquire a new skill? So there might be a number there that sound amazing, but actually when we teach in general, how we ask our students to present work is actually really limited. And there are justifiable reasons for this. Time for students to complete the work in, content-driven curriculums, confidence and access to technology, and in essence we end up with three main ways of showing understanding, and these are written reports, presentations and spreadsheets. Today we're going to focus on these three outcomes and discover how easy it is to reimagine them. So we're going to use Pages to showcase what an interactive, relevant and personalised book review might look like. So I'm going to use the example of a book review. We should all be familiar with what a book review would look like on a piece of paper. I'm sure that throughout our careers we've all photocopied hundreds of pieces of paper that look like this. Bear in mind that although we're using a book review example, actually this task can be adapted to suit any lessons where we want children to communicate their understanding to you. So it doesn't have to be a book review. This could be science, history, maths. It can be adapted to suit. So I'm going to go ahead and open Pages. And if you are following along with me, this is the interactive element of the lesson. So if you open Pages at the same time as me, and what we're going to do is we're going to press the add icon in the top right hand corner. So we're going to press on the plus icon, and what you'll notice is that actually there are a lot of templates already in here. And templates are a great way of actually saving a bit of time rather than designing a worksheet from scratch. And you can personalize and use them for a whole variety of ideas. So we're going to open up this for sale flyer today. So if you can find the for sale flyer and open this one for us to use. So obviously we're going to be doing a book review. We're not selling a moped. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this text. So by clicking in my red box, I know that actually in this top box, there's going to be my book title, author, and who the book review is by. So I need 3 lines of writing. So I need to adjust my text size. So in my format tool on the right corner, which is the paintbrush, I'm just going to use the minus sign just to bring that text size down, just by toggling until I get a size I think I'm going to fit 3 lines in. So about 26, 25 is just about right. I'm also going to use these justification tools here. The text is already on the left hand side, but actually I want it to appear here on the top of the red box. So by clicking this arrow, the text is now at the top. So I can go ahead now and I can change that text. So this is where, as this is a template, the children will be able to type over the top of these, adding in their own details. But this just indicates to them what it is I'm wanting them to write into that space. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of our picture of the moped, because that absolutely has nothing to do with the book that I've been reading. And I'm going to use the add menu again on this top right hand side, and I'm going to add a shape. I'm just going to add a square. I'm going to move the square until it fits about 2/3 of that space there. And the reason that I've done this is just going to depict a space for the children to add some content into. I'm going to type into here. This is where they are going to add a visual story plot. And again, using the format tool, I'm just going to push that to the top left corner of that blue box. Of course, you can have any style, colour, type of font that you want when you personalise these templates yourself. You don't have to use the given ones, and given more time, you can experiment with this a little bit more. So we're now going to add an image gallery into this space here. I'm going to go to the add button, and I'm going to use the sub menu here, and I'm going to use that far right one where we've got photo and video, camera, and here is the image gallery option. I'm going to resize that into the box. And what an image gallery does is it's a great way for students to add multiple images, so more than one photo, more than one piece of work that relates to the learning content. And because it's got this add button here, what happens, and it's a really efficient way for children then, is when they click the add button and they choose their photo, they don't have to navigate this menu on the right hand side. So I'm going to add some content in here. You obviously don't have any content prepared, that's fine. I just want to model to you what that looks like. So I've got 3 pieces of work. I've been reading the Twits, and when I press add, all 3 pieces of work end up in that box. I don't have to resize it or justify it or reposition it. It's all there. And you can see I've got my 3 dots there, and I've got an arrow. So by moving through, those are all 3 pieces of my work. So an image gallery is just a really efficient way of showing a collection of children's work. So an important reason for using Pages over a worksheet is its ability to capture audio. And so by adding a microphone from the shape gallery, so again using this add button, but this time on the sub menu I'm going to use the circle and square option, and I'm just going to search for a microphone. MIC will bring up this symbol here. This is perhaps the best one to use because it's very similar to the one that's used across multiple software packages, so children will recognise this instantly. I'm just going to turn this to a nice bright orange colour. You of course can choose your colours, and I'm also going to add in a circle shape. Currently that circle shape is in front of my microphone. I'm just going to turn it black. Again, I'm just trying to emulate here what a microphone icon might look like in different pieces of software. So I want children to be able to easily identify this. I can't see my microphone at the moment. So if I go to arrange in my format tool and arrange, I'm just going to use the slider until I can see my microphone. And then one final thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to click my microphone. Now this can be quite tricky for children and it's a bit of a learning curve for adults sometimes as well. I want to join these two shapes together so they become one shape, and when I move it, it moves as one shape. Currently the microphone moves without the circle. So if I just click on my microphone but I hold my finger down, circle in the background, you can see I've now got both shapes that have been highlighted with the blue circles, and I can click the word group and that's now one shape rather than two. Children, the more they use this, will understand that that means they're expected to record an audio. As this might be the first time that they're coming across this in a document, we might want a bit of a prompt for them to begin with. So if I grab this speech bubble here, I'm going to point it towards the microphone, and if I change the colour, this might just be where I tell children what I want them to do. So I want them to record a reading of a page. So I want them to record themselves reading me a page of their book. Which is a really, really useful assessment tool. And that's not something you can ever record on a worksheet that you photocopied 30 times before the lesson. Actually getting to hear the children read, have that saved on your iPad. You can refer back to it in September and then again in June and July. You can assess their intonation, their fluency, their expression. It's a really valuable assessment resource to get children to record. How children would record would simply be when they're filling in their template, they press on their add button and they go to the record audio option, and they can record straight in and drop a little sound bubble there. Okay, so in the book review, it's also important to capture children's responses to what they read. So I'm now going to edit this red bottom box here. So once again, I'm going to edit the text size. So just by selecting the box and going to our format tool, you'll become really familiar with this after a time. Everything to edit the text is in this text submenu, and I'm just once again going to reduce the size of the text, but this time I'm going to have it to the bottom. So I'm now going to get rid of the writing, and I'm going to ask a specific question here. So what did you enjoy most about the story? Obviously, you can pick your question to make it relevant to the book that you're reading. And what I would want children to do here is I want them to drop in a video, a selfie video, where they're actually talking to the camera about the book. You can hear their reasoning about the story, about the characters, potentially even their predictions. I've prepared a little short instruction video that I'm just going to drop in here, and this would be used just as a placeholder for children. So it simply gives instructions.
For your book review,
my giraffe there is just saying record a video explaining what you enjoyed most about the story. You'll note I've used the emoji on top of my face there. That is a great thing to do. And then when children see that, they will know exactly what to do because the instructions are held within the video itself. And then finally, on my book review, I'm then going to have a text box as well, something a bit more traditional on what a book review would look like. So once again, I'm just going to make sure that this is going to the top of the box and it's over on the left. And again, this might be better matched to the story that you're reading in class, or it might be more generic dependent on what you're using the book review for. So you might be wanting responses about what they read. So that is my interactive book review example. It's a multimedia project. It captures audio, it captures a video diary, you've got note-taking all in one space, you've got a reflection space as well with a text box. Innovation happens when it's creative, personal, active and relevant, and that's what this template has done. So because this is a template, if I had no content here and it just said image gallery, when I saved this, if I use the 3 dots in that top right-hand corner and export it, what I would do is save it as a Pages template. So back in the days when we all had folders full of worksheets that we would use and photocopy again and again and again, this is just a digital version of that. So I'm going to add to my template chooser. And when I come back, I haven't got to scroll through a lot of templates. I can see that the template I've created is just there for me to use and share out with students in its template format. Okay, so that was Pages. I hope you found that really useful. We're now going to move on to numbers. So in this section, we're going to have a look at how many ways this multi-layered app can be used in class to make learning more effective and how it can encourage innovation and deeper understanding. This is another interactive element, so you can learn in real time with me, or you can do this at your own speed, pausing and replaying the video. This resource that we're adapting today is actually from a fellow ADE, Lindsay Stuttard, and this is her resource, so I must make sure I accredit her. This is not a resource that I created. So I'm going to go ahead and open Numbers this time. And I'm going to open that document that hopefully you all have a copy of if you're working in real time with me. So the focus here is very much Key Stage 1. But as with the Pages document, this model can easily be adapted to support science investigations, history lessons. It's by no means a Key Stage 1 kind of document. This has such huge potential. This was just a really nice way of introducing you to what can be created in Numbers. So Numbers is advertised as a spreadsheet tool, but you can see already I can't see a chart in sight at the moment. It's got considerably more potential to impact on innovation than just creating spreadsheets, but it can enhance learning experience by supplementing the spreadsheet content and data collection with real life experiences. So having a look at this model, you will see that there are different tabs on the top. So we've got Numbers in Nature, Fancy Flowers, Lovely Leaves and Brilliant Birds. And you will see that the workspace in this document has been highlighted by using this background element here. Numbers is very much this infinite blank space. If you move around it, it just goes on and on. And when you're working with younger learners, it's a good idea to have that background just to draw their eye to the actual content that you want them to work with. So this is very much just a front page, as if this was a book that they were working in. So we are going to open Fancy Flowers. So if you're working with me, please open the Fancy Flowers tab. And with young learners as well as older learners, you will be very familiar with the fact that if you give them something digital, the first thing they do is end up moving these boxes around and then complaining that their boxes are moving all over the screen, which can be really frustrating for everyone involved. So a very simple trick when you are using numbers to stop that happening is to lock those in place. So I'm just going to highlight this directions box, and you can do this as well. And we're just going to go to that format button again. And we're going to go into arrange, which is the third option on our submenu. And you'll see that word lock there. Those blue circles have now turned to a grey circle with an X in them. And that box there is no longer going anywhere. I can repeat that process with this white drawing box there. Go into the format button, go into arrange, and just locking it in place. That's a really good key tip to use whenever you build something that children are going to be adding content to. You will note, however, we're not going to lock in place the spreadsheet here that children will be filling in, because if I lock it in place, children will no longer be able to add any content to it, which that's the whole idea of having that there. So it may be that ends up moving around the page, but again, that's a learning experience where children can identify how to pick up and move charts around their page. But definitely we've locked in those two elements there. Just going to draw your attention to the drawing box here. So we've got some instruction on the page, we've got a spreadsheet on the page, but having this drawing box, not just for young learners, but for any learners really, having a space to draw can be a really powerful accessibility tool for some of our learners. Just having the ability to pick up their Apple Pencil and communicate their understanding through drawing. And if you haven't got Apple Pencils, they can still do this by pressing the add button and then using the drawing option there, and they can use their finger instead to create their content. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we've already used our audio function once for the children to record themselves reading a book to us, but we're now going to use the audio function as an accessibility tool. So if you've got children in your class where reading is a barrier and that actually they wouldn't be able to read that text there, you can use the audio function. So instead of having to read the instructions, that actually they can listen to those instead. So we just press our record button here, take a walk outside or in your garden, or go to a local park, anywhere there are flowers, select and identify at least 3 types of flowers and complete the table. So because I'm on a webinar screen record, that won't allow me to actually record my voice, but once I was done, I'd be able to press insert there and I would have a little speech icon that I could put right next to the writing, allowing those children who find reading a barrier to their learning just to listen to the instruction, and then they can feel successful and they can feel independent also. So for a very simple page, there's a lot of really important techniques all in one page on there. We're now going to move to Lovely Leaves. So you'll see that this space here has been indicated for children to drop in a picture. So if I select a picture right here, I'm aware that you won't have a picture prepped, that's absolutely fine. And if I just, apologies, that's the one I wanted. If I just drop in my leaf, the main thing about this is that leaf has just dropped straight into the middle of my page. It hasn't, in fact, dropped into that nice little neat box that I wanted it to. And for young learners, actually resizing and then getting it exactly in the right place can be a little bit frustrating. So what we're going to have a look at is how to improve that and use something called a placeholder instead. So the shapes that we've used so far, they're actually 2 separate shapes. I've got a box and I've got the white camera icon. So the first thing that we're going to do, similar to what we did with the microphone and the circle, so we're rehearsing our techniques here, is we're going to create them together as one shape. So holding down that background shape, holding down the white camera shape, sorry, and then holding down the background shape, I've then got the option to group. So now that is one shape. That's going to be a lot more useful for me to use. But still, if children are adding in content here, again, particularly with young learners, they need to go to the add button, find the right picture, put it in the right place. I'm actually going to take a screenshot of that instead. So I'm going to work around my split screen. This works so much more efficiently if it is a split screen, but this is another way of doing it. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to turn those shapes into a photograph, because currently as a shape, it's not being very useful to me other than indicating a space. But by turning it into a photograph and adding it onto my presentation in the right place, using the format tool and the arrange option, sorry, not the arrange option, the image option, I can set this as a placeholder. So you can see straight away that there's a difference, and the difference is this little black button here. What that means is that children will be able to efficiently just click on that black button, go straight to choose photo or video, choose their leaf, and it's gone exactly in the right place and it's exactly the right size. So for younger learners, it takes away that frustration of getting things in the right place. For older learners, it's just a more efficient way of using your lesson time. They can spend less time on what their design looks like. If you have managed to get the photo album on this right hand side, a really nice trick using split screen is that you would be able to pick up your picture here, and you would be able to pick up your picture here, and you'd be able to move it into your photo album, and it immediately becomes a photo, and then you can move the photo from your photo album back to here. But we found a different way by just using a screenshot instead. So the final thing that we're going to do with numbers now is we're going to just go through the process of creating one of these ourselves. So we're going to go to this add button in the top left hand corner, and we're going to go to a new sheet. I'm going to rename my new sheet Interesting Insects. And if you have got your emojis at the bottom of your screen, this is a nice place to put some emojis also. I'm just going to move my chart down. We are going to use that, but I'm just going to move it down a little bit because we are going to add in one of those background images to draw our eye into our workspace. So using the add tool and the shapes, I'm just going to select a square. I'm going to change the colour into something a little bit more subtle. So I'm just going to have maybe there we go, that's nice. So I'm going to add that into the top corner, drag it out across the workspace I'm going to be using. And once again, using the arrange in that top right, I'm just going to make sure that moves right to the back. And what should happen when I do that is, there's my chart. Is your chart should appear on the top. There we go. I got carried away with how much of a square I used. So your chart appears on the top and your background image is very firmly in the background. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add text for our instructions. So we're going to go to the add button once again, and this time we're going to add some text. Moving the text where we want it at the top. It's a good idea to keep these places familiar to the children so they always know where they're going to look for it. And our instructions this time are telling the children to go for a walk and find some insects, complete the table. Once again, if I had a little bit more time, I would be looking at formatting all of this with my format tool and my text options, and making sure I've got a bigger size, a nicer font, and maybe a background colour for that also. We're now going to have a look at our chart, just moving that underneath the instructions. So for this chart, I'm going to need 4 columns. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 currently. So if I use what looks like a plus sign, this circle right at the end, if I hold that down and drag my finger right, you can see immediately I'll get more columns. If I drag it left, I get less columns. So I'm looking for 4 columns. And this works the same with the rows as well. So I've currently got 10 rows. And if I use this little equal sign here to hold on to, then I've got 5 rows there. I can then resize that to make that a little bit bigger. It's a good idea before you start to highlight all the boxes and to format the cells first with the right size text that you're going to want. So somewhere around 15 is fine. You might want to adapt the text colour depending on what background colour that you've had. So we're now going to put some information in here. We're going to have the name of the insect in column A. We're going to have how many we found in column B. We're going to have the number of legs in C, and we're going to have the number of antennae in column D. So the children, when they go on their walk, they can take their iPad with them. They can fill this in as they go along. I'm just going to put some examples in just for modelling purposes here. And I'm going to pretend I've seen 5 ladybirds, 4 ants, and 10 woodlice. So what I can do here now, again, I'm going to highlight. So I'm going to click in A1. In fact, I'm going to click in A2. And I'm going to drag that to the columns and the rows containing my how many numbers. When I do that, I get this floating toolbar here. And if I select cell actions, I've got create a new chart. I'm going to select something just nice and simple. And I'm going to drag that into my workspace. I can change the size there as well. Now, the nice thing about this is once I've added this here, actually, there doesn't have to be any information in any of these. It just sits there ready. So that when the children do start populating it with their numbers, it edits straight away and they can see how many they found. And actually, if they've miscounted, they can go back and it edits the chart in real time for them so they can see the differences in what they created. You could also add some reflective audio button here for children or some drawing options so that they can add in their drawings of what they found as well. So I thought it would be really useful, not just to show you that one as an example, but also to show you some of the other kinds of things that you could do with numbers. So here are a couple of examples that I've found. So linking into a topic, stories of a lifetime, you'll see that this is a really nice presented document. You've got your tabs across the top, research, storyboard, script, and you can see the planning journal element over on that right-hand side. And that bottom one on the right is a maths example. You've got different areas there of chili challenge, from 1 chilies to 3 chilies, and lots of spaces where children can create and add their own content. You can use this kind of workbook idea across a range of subjects, and dependent on age and context, it will dictate how much scaffolding is needed. By year 6, you would potentially have less and less scaffolding and allow children more choice to decide what their workspace would look like. But once again, allowing children to use a variety of media on one document not only allows for all learners to be successful, but it enhances that opportunity for innovation as well. So our final activity is using Keynote. At this stage, I'm just going to be modelling, so it's not an interactive element of the webinar, but we're going to have a look at how adding links can be used to demonstrate a greater depth of understanding. So for this activity, I'm going to share a ready-made Keynote and highlight its features, presentation, emergency services. So allowing children to organise their learning and create content for a specific audience enhances that retrieval, deepens understanding of content and knowledge. Let's start on the first page. There we go. So in this example, emergency heroes, very relevant in the current situation. On page 1, you can see I've got three photos. If I click my ambulance photo, it goes straight to a data about ambulance volumes per day. And you will note that in the bottom right-hand corner, I've got a back button as well. So when I tap that back button, I'm back on my home screen. So if I click the police car this time, I've gone to a piece of text. I've done some research. I've added lots of text in there. And once again, I've got that back button, which brings me back to that home page. If I go to the air ambulance, this one is linked to an animated infographic. If you use the Everyone Can Create curriculum, infographics is one of the things that is one of the lessons that you can have a play around with. And this is very much about using the images and the objects to show understanding of a topic and of a piece of research. So what happens here is the air ambulance moves down and you can see the clock and all those elements around side the infographic, or having some elements of movement. So the way that this was created is really actually very simple. So if I'm back here on my home page and I've added in a photo, if I click the photo, you'll see that I actually get the option to link in my floating menu. So when I tap link, there's lots of things that I can link up to, but this is the most important one here, link to slide. So I can link to slide number 1, or in actual fact, I can link to web pages as well. So I can put URLs in there and it will take children directly to a specific web page. That's another really useful tool. So that's linking to slide 5, which, as you can see here, is the data collected on ambulances. And the back button, it's not just photos I can link, but I can link shapes as well. So the back button just came from the add and the auto shapes that we have stored in Keynote. Once again, when I click on the back button, I get this option to link, and this one is linking back to my home page. So really quick to set up links, but when children are trying to show their understanding and present for a specific audience, it can be a really efficient way of them presenting and organising their information. The infographics works if I tap on one of the shapes and go to the animate area. I've got 3 dots and 3 lines at the top there, the menu function, and you can see which order all my infographics are coming into play in. So the air ambulance is first, followed by the text and the clock. Obviously, I can move these around to be in any order that I wish. I'm not going into the details of animation in this workshop because that's a whole other hour. But if you are familiar with animating, you'll know that there is a build in, an add action, and an add build out for any shape that you add to a Keynote slide. Or you've got the option of using something called Magic Move if that's something that you are familiar with. If you do want to learn more about animation, that's something we can cover in a different webinar. So that was just a brief look at Keynote and using links to animate. And the idea behind that is just to really give that as a task to children when they've got a specific audience in mind and you want to and you want them to retrieve the knowledge that they've learned, and you want them to prove their understanding of that content knowledge. That's far more engaging to them than potentially writing 3 pages in a book, which is something they would be really familiar with. If you want that retrieval, it's important to make sure that we're giving them an engaging activity. So, as I said, we're coming back to our original question now. So, considering the topics that you will be teaching in the next term and thinking about the resources that we've demonstrated, what could you now use to encourage your students to innovate? Which of these tips are you going to pick up and use? Which are you going to adapt for your own lesson content? Compared to when we asked this question at the beginning of the webinar, that actually you've got some inspiration from what we've delivered, and you've got something that potentially you could drop a small thing into your planning for next week, planning for something slightly bigger the week after, and then maybe in 4 weeks, a bigger workbook project potentially. So I just want to highlight, if you are really interested in innovation, and in particular how learning, teaching and the environment support innovation in schools, Apple have this amazing free book on the bookstore, Innovation in Schools, and how you can leverage technology and develop that learning, introducing, integrating and innovating with your technology. I'm hoping, and I know that the majority of you are already Apple teachers. If you are not, I'd love to direct you towards the Apple Teacher Learning Centre, an amazing resource where you can collect badges and become an official Apple teacher. If you are an Apple teacher already, which I know a lot of you are, it is a website that you can keep going back to, even though you already have your Apple Teacher, because there are lots and lots of learning resources for teachers that are regularly updated. This is one that's on my to-do list tomorrow. I'm definitely going into the Teacher Learning Centre and having a look at augmented reality, some amazing ideas around creativity. And actually, in the current times that we are in, there are some fantastic resources around remote learning also. Finally, just before I leave you to your evening, our next upcoming webinars on December the 3rd, we are looking at saving time and reducing workload, always a favourite, amplifying creativity in January, and February we are looking at enabling environments in the early years. That one will be led by the wonderful Becky Murray from Mere Green. Thank you very much for joining me on this webinar today. I hope we've inspired you around innovation.